The ship was dying. Elder Horus could feel it in the way the floor shook under his small feet. He could hear it in the terrible sounds that came from deep inside the walls. The engines had stopped working 3 hours ago, and now the Luminara was floating dead in the cold darkness of space. Horus walked slowly through the main corridor of the ship. His thin blue skin felt cold. His large black eyes looked at the families huddled together on both sides of the hallway. Mothers held their children close. Fathers tried to look brave, but Horus could see the fear in their faces. 4,000 of his people were on this ship. 4,000 Valari who had left their homes to start a new life on a distant colony world. Now they might never arrive. The Valari were a gentle species. They stood only 3 feet tall. Their bones were light and hollow, like the bones of birds. Their skin was thin and soft. They had never been warriors. They had never needed to be. For thousands of years, they lived in peace, building beautiful cities and creating wonderful music. Violence was something they only read about in old stories. But the universe was not a peaceful place. Horus entered the command room of the ship. Captain Vila stood at the center, her hands shaking as she looked at the large screen on the wall. The screen showed something that made Horus feel sick with fear. Ships. Enemy ships. They were still far away, but they were coming closer with every passing minute. How many? Horus asked, though he was afraid to hear the answer. 12 ships, Captain Vila said. Her voice was barely a whisper. Krath raiders. They will reach us in 6 hours. The Krath. Horus had heard stories about them. Everyone in the galaxy had. They were pirates and slavers. They attacked weak ships and took everything of value. They took supplies. They took technology. Worst of all, they took people. The Krath sold captured aliens to the highest bidder across the galaxy. No one who was taken by the Krath was ever seen again. Can we fix the engines? Horus asked. No, said the chief engineer, a young Valari named Tomas. His eyes were red from crying. The main power core is broken. We would need a repair station. We would need parts. We have nothing. I am sorry, Elder. I have failed everyone. Horus put his small hand on the young engineer's shoulder. You have not failed. The ship is old. These things happen. This is not your fault. But knowing whose fault it was did not help. They were still going to die. Or worse, they would become slaves. Captain Vila turned to look at Horus. There is one thing we could try, she said slowly. But it is forbidden. The Galactic Council has made it very clear that we must never do this. What is it? Horus asked. Vila pointed to a star on the navigation map. It was a small yellow star in a distant arm of the galaxy. There is a planet here. The beings who live there are called humans. They come from a world named Earth. Horus felt a chill run through his body. He knew about Earth. Everyone knew about Earth. It was a death world. A death world was a planet so dangerous, so violent, that it should not be able to support intelligent life. Earth had crushing gravity that would break Valari bones. It had extreme temperatures that changed wildly throughout the year. It had massive storms, earthquakes, and floods. The planet was covered with dangerous predators that hunted and killed each other constantly. And somehow, humans had survived there. They had not just survived. They had become the dominant species on their world. The Galactic Council said this made them extremely dangerous. The Council said humans were violent, unpredictable, and strong beyond reason. They could survive injuries that would kill any other species. They could keep fighting even when they were badly hurt. They were the monsters that parents told their children about to scare them into behaving. You want to call the Deathworlders for help? Horus asked. That is madness. They might be worse than the Krath. They might be, Vela agreed. Or they might not come at all. Humans have never responded to any alien communication. They might not even have the technology to reach us. But Elder, we have no other choice. The Krath will be here in 6 hours. If we do nothing, we die or become slaves. If we send a message to Earth, maybe something different happens. Maybe. Oris looked at the screen. He looked at the Krath ships getting closer. He thought about the 4,000 people on this ship. He thought about the children. Little ones who had done nothing wrong. Little ones who deserved a chance to grow up and live their lives. Send the message, Oris said. Viola nodded. Her fingers moved across the control panel. She recorded a simple message, speaking slowly and clearly. She explained who they were. She explained that they were peaceful. She told the humans about the Krath. She begged for help. She gave their exact location and space. Then she pressed the button. And the message flew out into the darkness at the speed of light. After that, there was nothing to do but wait. Oris left the command room and walked through the ship again. He stopped at a large window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, in the direction of that small yellow star, was Earth. Were the humans listening? Would they understand the message? Would they care? The Galactic Council said humans were monsters. But Oris had lived long enough to know that rumors were not always true. Sometimes the scariest stories were about things that people did not understand. Maybe humans were terrible killers. Or maybe they were something else entirely. He watched the stars in silence. Behind him, he could hear a mother singing softly to her frightened child. The song was old and sad, a lullaby about the darkness between the stars and the hope of finding light. Oris closed his eyes and did something he had not done in many years. He prayed. He prayed to any power that might be listening. He prayed that help would come. He prayed that his people would survive this night. The hours passed slowly. The Krath ships came closer and closer. The people on the Luminara grew more and more afraid. No one slept. No one could eat. Everyone just waited, watching the enemy approach, counting down the minutes until their doom. And far, far away, on a small blue planet circling a yellow star, a machine began to beep. Someone had received their message. The message arrived at Earth at 3 in the morning. A young technician named David was working the night shift at the Deep Space Monitoring Station in Colorado. He was drinking his 4th cup of coffee when his computer made a sound he had never heard before. It was the alarm for an incoming alien signal. David almost dropped his coffee. He stared at the screen for a long moment, not believing what he was seeing. Then he picked up the phone and made a call that would change human history forever. Within 1 hour, the message had reached the highest levels of government. Within 2 hours, it was being played in a secret meeting room deep underground. The most powerful people on Earth sat around a long table and listened to the desperate voice of Captain Vela, begging for help. When the message ended, there was silence. "Is this real?" asked the President of the United States. "We believe so, sir," said General Adams, the head of Space Command. The signal came from deep space. The technology used to send it is far beyond anything we have. We have never received anything like this before. "They are asking for our help," said another voice. It belonged to Dr. Sarah White, the head of the secret First Contact team. "They say they have 4,000 civilians, including children. They say pirates are coming to capture them. And they call us Deathworlders," said another general with a frown. "That does not sound friendly. It is a scientific term," Dr. White explained. "It refers to planets with extreme conditions. Earth is technically a death world by galactic standards. Our gravity is high. Our climate is extreme. Our wildlife is dangerous. To aliens, we are terrifying." The president rubbed his tired eyes. "So aliens are real, and they think we are monsters." And now some of them are in trouble and asking for our help. Do we even have the ability to help them? General Adams smiled slightly. Sir, I think it is time to tell you about Project Iron Will. For the past 20 years, Earth's governments had been working together in secret. They had been building something incredible. They had discovered the secrets of faster-than-light travel. They had built weapons that could destroy entire asteroids. And they had constructed a ship. Not just any ship. The largest, most powerful warship ever created by human hands. The USS Iron Will was 3 kilometers long. It carried enough weapons to fight a small war. It had shields that could stop nuclear explosions. Its crew numbered 2,000 men and women. It also carried 500 of the best soldiers Earth had ever produced. The ship had been built in secret, hidden on the dark side of the moon. It was ready for its first mission. We can reach them in time, General Adams said. The question is, should we? The room fell silent again. Everyone knew this was a huge decision. If they sent the ship, they would be announcing humanity's presence to the entire galaxy. There would be no going back. The universe would know about Earth. Some aliens might be friendly. Others might be enemies. Everything would change. They have children on that ship, the president said quietly. They are going to be taken by slavers. We have the power to stop it. If we do nothing, we are no better than the pirates ourselves. He stood up and looked at everyone in the room. Send the Iron Will. Save those people. And God help anyone who gets in our way. 3 hours later, Captain Jake Miller stood on the bridge of the USS Iron Will. He was a tall man in his 40s with gray hair and calm eyes. He had served in the military for 25 years. He had seen combat. He had lost friends. He had learned that war was terrible, but sometimes necessary. When he received the orders for this mission, he did not hesitate. He said yes immediately. His executive officer, Commander Emma Cole, stood beside him. She was younger than Jake, with sharp eyes and a quick mind. She had been the top of her class at the Naval Academy. She was brilliant at strategy and planning. She was also kind, though she tried to hide it behind a professional attitude. All stations report ready, Captain, Emma said. The crew is prepared. The Marines are prepared. We are waiting for your order. Jake looked around the bridge. His crew was scared. He could see it in their faces. This was the moment humanity had been preparing for. This was the first time they would meet aliens. No one knew what would happen. Open a channel to the whole ship, Jake said. His voice echoed through every corridor, every room, every section of the massive vessel. This is Captain Miller. In a few minutes, we are going to do something no human has ever done. We are going to leave our solar system. We are going to meet alien life. And we are going to save innocent people from terrible fate. He paused for a moment. I know you are scared. I am scared too. We do not know what is out there. We do not know if these aliens will thank us or fear us. But I know one thing for certain. There are 4,000 people on that ship who are going to die or become slaves if we do nothing. There are children on that ship. They sent a message asking for help. They sent it to us. Jake's voice grew stronger. I do not care if they are alien. I do not care if they look different from us. I do not care if they think we are monsters. They are in trouble, and we can help. That is enough. That has always been enough. When someone cries for help, you answer. That is what humans do. That is what we have always done. And today, we are going to show the galaxy what humanity is really made of. He took a deep breath. All hands, prepare for faster-than-light jump. Destination: the Luminara. Let us go save some lives. The engines of the Iron Will began to roar. Energy built up around the massive ship. The crew held on to their stations as the vessel started to shake. Lieutenant Mike Torres, the weapons officer, checked his systems one last time. Every gun was loaded. Every missile was ready. If anyone tried to hurt those aliens while he was on duty, they would regret it. Dr. Lisa Park, the chief medical officer, prepared her medical teams. She did not know what Valari bodies looked like. She did not know how to heal them. But she would learn. She would do whatever it took. Sergeant Ben Carter, leader of the Marine Squad, stood with his soldiers in the launch bay. They were ready for combat. They were ready to fight and die if necessary. But Carter hoped it would not come to that. He hoped they could save everyone without losing anyone. The ship shook harder. Lights flashed. Alarms beeped. "Jump in 10 seconds," announced the navigation officer. 9, 8, 7. Jake Miller gripped the arms of his captains. Chair. 6, 5. Emma Cole took a deep breath beside him. 3, 2, 1. The USS Iron Will disappeared from Earth's solar system in a flash of blinding light. It tore through the fabric of space itself, traveling faster than anyone had ever traveled before. It left behind a world that would never be the same. And it rushed toward a group of frightened aliens who had no idea what was coming to save them. The Krath warships surrounded the Luminara like wolves circling a wounded deer. Warlord Drex stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Bloodclaw, and smiled with satisfaction. His sharp teeth gleamed in the red light of his command center. This was going to be an easy prize. The Krath were large creatures, standing nearly 7 feet tall. They had thick gray skin covered with scars from countless battles. Their eyes were small and cruel. They had conquered dozens of weaker species over the centuries. They took what they wanted. They feared nothing. "Open a channel to the prey," Drex ordered. His communication officer obeyed. A moment later, the terrified face of Captain Vela appeared on the screen. Her large eyes were wet with tears. Her small body was shaking. "Attention, Valari vessel," Drex said, his voice cold and hard. "You will lower your shields and prepare to be boarded. If you cooperate, we will be gentle. If you resist, we will kill half of you and take the rest anyway. You have 5 minutes to decide." He cut the communication before Vela could respond. He did not care what she had to say. He already knew what would happen. The Valari were weak. They always surrendered. They always begged for mercy. It was pathetic, but it made his job easier. "Prepare the boarding ships," Drex commanded. "I want the children separated from the adults immediately." Young Valari sell for a higher price. His crew laughed and began their preparations. The slavers were in good spirits. This was going to be profitable. On the Luminara, Captain Vela looked at Elder with despair in her eyes. "No one is coming," she whispered. The Deathworlders did not answer. "We are alone." Oris closed his eyes. He had hoped so much. He had prayed so hard. But it seemed the universe did not care about his prayers. His people were going to suffer a terrible fate, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. "Tell everyone to stay calm," Oris said quietly. "Tell them to cooperate with the Krath. Fighting will only make things worse. Perhaps some of us will survive. Perhaps someday someone will rescue our people." It was a weak hope, but it was all he had. Vela nodded and turned to give the orders. But before she could speak, something strange happened. The sensors on the ship began to scream. Alarms filled the command room with noise. "What is happening?" Oris asked, confused. The navigation officer stared at his screen with wide eyes. "Something is coming. Something big. Something is coming out of faster than light travel right next to us." Outside the window, space itself began to tear apart. A massive crack of pure white light appeared in the darkness. It grew larger and larger, blazing with energy so bright that everyone had to look away. And then, through that crack in reality, came the ship. The USS Iron Will emerged from the light like a metal god rising from the void. It was enormous, beyond comprehension. The Valari ships were small, maybe 100 meters long. The Krath warships were larger, perhaps 300 meters each. The Iron Will was 3,000 meters of pure human engineering. It dwarfed everything around it. Its hull was covered with weapons. Its engines burned with blue fire. It was the most terrifying and beautiful thing any of them had ever seen. On the Bloodclaw, Warlord Drex stared at the newcomer with his mouth hanging open. His sensors were going crazy. They could not even fully measure the size of this vessel. It was impossible. Nothing that big should be able to move, let alone travel faster than light. What is that? Drex whispered. For the first time in his long career of violence, he felt afraid. His communication officer was shaking. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the unknown ship." "Put it through," Drex said. The screen flickered, and a new face appeared. It was an alien face, unlike anything Drex had seen before. It had smooth pink skin, two forward-facing eyes, and a strange growth of gray fur on top of its head. It wore a dark uniform with strange symbols on it. Its expression was calm, but its eyes were hard as stone. "This is Captain Jake Miller of the USS Iron Will, representing the United Earth Fleet," the creature said. Its voice was deep and steady. "You will stand down and withdraw from this area immediately. If you do not comply, you will be destroyed. You have 60 seconds. Drex blinked in confusion. He had never heard of Earth. He had never heard of humans. He did not know what a death world was, or why the Galactic Council feared these beings. All he knew was that some strange alien had just threatened him, and Warlord Drex did not accept threats from anyone. "You dare speak to me this way?" Drex roared into the communicator. "I am Warlord Drex of the Krath Empire. I have conquered 100 worlds. I have killed 10,000 enemies. You are one ship. I have 12. You are the one who should be afraid." The human captain did not seem impressed. 50 seconds, he said calmly. Drex turned red with rage. "All ships, attack the unknown vessel. Destroy it immediately." The Krath fleet opened fire. Dozens of energy beams and missiles flew toward the Iron Will. They struck the ship's shields and exploded in brilliant flashes of light. When the light faded, the human vessel was completely undamaged. On the bridge of the Iron Will, Captain Miller turned to his weapons officer. "Lieutenant Torres, demonstrate our capabilities. Target their lead ship. Fire main cannon, 20% power." Mike Torres grinned. "With pleasure, Captain." He pressed a single button. A beam of pure white energy shot from the front of the Iron Will. It was so bright that it hurt to look at. It crossed the distance between the ships in less than a second and struck the lead Krath warship directly in the center. The Krath vessel did not explode. It simply stopped existing. One moment it was there, and the next moment it was gone, erased from reality by the force of the blast. 300 Krath warriors died before they even knew what had happened. Silence fell over the battlefield. Warlord Drex stared at the empty space where his ship had been. His hands were shaking. His crew was frozen in terror. This was not possible. This could not be real. "That was 20% power," came Captain Miller's voice again. "Would you like to see what happens at 100%? Or would you prefer to leave and never come back?" Drex tried to respond, but no words came out of his mouth. He had lived his whole life taking what he wanted by force. He had never met anyone stronger than him. Until now. "Warlord," his first officer whispered. "We should retreat. We cannot win this fight." Drex wanted to argue. He wanted to fight. But he was not stupid. He knew death when he saw it. And this human ship was death itself, wrapped in metal and fury. All ships, withdraw, Drex ordered, his voice hollow with defeat. Fall back to craft space. The remaining 11 craft vessels turned and fled. They activated their engines and ran as fast as they could, disappearing into the darkness of space. They did not look back. On the Luminara, the Valari watched in stunned silence. They could not believe what had just happened. The Deathworlders had come. They had saved them. And they had done it with a single shot. Elder felt tears running down his cheeks. For the first time in many hours, he allowed himself to feel hope. The communicator buzzed again. A new voice came through, softer than the captain's voice. It was a female voice, gentle and kind. "Attention, Valari vessel," said Commander Emma Cole. "This is the USS Iron Will. The threat has been eliminated. Do you require assistance? We have medical teams and engineers ready to help if needed." Captain Vila looked at Oris. Oris looked back at her. Neither of them knew what to say. They had called for help from monsters, and instead, angels had arrived. "Yes," Oris finally said into the communicator. "Yes, please. We would be very grateful for your help." "Understood," Emma replied warmly. "Help is on the way. Just hold on a little longer. You are safe now." And for the first time since the engines had failed, the Valari believed it. The shuttle from the Iron Will approached the Luminara slowly. Captain Miller had given strict orders to move carefully. He did not want to frighten the aliens any more than necessary. They had just survived a terrifying experience. They did not need more stress. Inside the shuttle, Dr. Lisa Park checked her medical supplies for the 10th time. She had no idea what Valari biology looked like. She did not know if human medicine would help them or hurt them. But she had brought everything she could think of. Bandages, painkillers, antibiotics, surgical tools, and dozens of other items filled the boxes around her. Sergeant Ben Carter sat nearby with his squad of 10 Marines. They wore their full combat armor, but their weapons were stored away. Carter had ordered his soldiers to look as non-threatening as possible, which was difficult when you were wearing heavy battle gear. But they would try. "Remember," Carter said to his team, "we are here to help, not to scare. These aliens think we are monsters. We need to show them that we are not. Keep your voices low. Move slowly. Smile if you can. Be kind." The Marines nodded. They were trained to fight and kill, but they were also human beings. They understood the mission. They would protect these small creatures, not harm them. The shuttle docked with the Luminara with a gentle bump. The airlock opened, and the humans stepped into the alien ship for the first time in history. The first thing they noticed was how small everything was. The corridors were narrow. The ceilings were low. Ben Carter, who stood over 6 feet tall, had to bend down to avoid hitting his head. The lights were soft and purple. The air smelled sweet, like flowers on a spring day. And then they saw the Valari. Hundreds of them lined the corridor, pressed against the walls, staring at the humans with enormous black eyes. They were tiny, barely reaching Carter's waist. Their skin was pale blue. Their limbs were thin and delicate. They looked like they would break if someone touched them too hard. A small child peeked out from behind its mother's legs. It stared at Carter's armored form with open terror. His little body was shaking. Carter felt his heart ache. He had seen many things in his military career. He had faced enemies in battle. He had lost friends. He had been shot and stabbed and nearly killed more than once. But nothing had prepared him for the fear in that child's eyes. This tiny creature was looking at him like he was a nightmare come to life. "It is okay," Carter said softly, kneeling down to make himself smaller. "We are here to help. We are friends." The child did not understand his words, but it seemed to understand his tone. Its shaking slowed slightly. Dr. Park stepped forward. "Is anyone hurt?" She asked clearly, hoping the aliens had translation technology. We have medical supplies. We can help. Elder Horus pushed through the crowd. He had to tilt his head all the way back to look at the human woman's face. She was giant to him. Her hands alone were bigger than his head. But her eyes were kind, and her voice was gentle. Some of our people are injured, Horus said. The translation devices worked well enough. The ship shook badly when the engines failed. Several have broken bones and cuts. Take me to them, Lisa said immediately. I will do everything I can. Horus led the doctor and two of her assistants to the medical bay. Along the way, they passed more Valari who stared at them with fear and wonder. Some of them whispered to each other. Lisa heard words like Deathworlders and dangerous, repeated many times. In the medical bay, Lisa found about 30 injured Valari. Most had minor cuts and bruises, but a few had more serious injuries. One elderly Valari had a badly broken arm. A young female had a deep cut on her forehead that was still bleeding. Lisa got to work immediately. She cleaned wounds with gentle hands. She applied bandages carefully, aware that the Valari skin was incredibly thin. She set the broken arm using the smallest splints she had brought. The elderly patient winced in pain but did not cry out. You are being very brave, Lisa said softly. I know it hurts. I am almost done. When she finished, the elderly Valari looked up at her with something new in his eyes. It was not fear anymore. It was gratitude. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you, Deathworlder. Lisa smiled. My name is Lisa, you can call me that. Meanwhile, in the engine room, a team of human engineers was inspecting the Luminar's broken systems. The chief engineer, a young man named Tom, scratched his head as he looked at the alien technology. It was completely different from anything on Earth, but the basic principles were the same. Power source, energy distribution, thrust generation. The details were different, but the ideas were familiar. I think I can fix this, Tom said to the Valari engineer Tomas, who was watching nervously. Your main power core is cracked, but if we bypass it and connect your secondary systems to our portable generator, we can get your engines running again. It will not be perfect, but it will get you home. Tomas stared at the human in amazement. You would give us your power generator? That is very valuable equipment. Tom shrugged. You need it more than we do. The Iron Will has plenty of backup power. This is nothing. He smiled and got to work. Within 2 hours, the Luminar's engines hummed back to life. The ship could move again. The Valari cheered with joy. Back in the main corridor, Sergeant Carter had become an unexpected attraction. The Valari children had lost their fear of him. They now surrounded him, touching his armor with tiny hands, asking questions in their high-pitched voices. Why are you so big? One child asked. Because I come from a heavy world, Carter explained patiently. The gravity on Earth pulls down hard. We had to grow strong to walk and run. Are you really a monster? Another child asked with innocent curiosity. Carter laughed softly. No, I am just a person. A different kind of person, but still just a person. I have a family back home. A little daughter named Emily. She is about your size. The children gasped in surprise. The idea that this giant creature had a tiny child like them was hard to believe. Carter reached into a small pouch on his belt. He pulled out a chocolate bar that he had been saving for himself. He broke it into small pieces and offered them to the children. Try this, he said. It is called chocolate. It is sweet. It is one of the best things from my planet. The children looked at their parents for permission. The parents hesitated, but then nodded slowly. The children took the pieces and put them in their mouths. Their eyes went wide with delight. This is wonderful, one child said, chocolate smeared on its face. This is the best thing I have ever tasted. Carter grinned. I know, right? Chocolate is amazing. Elder Horus watched this scene from a distance. Tears were forming in his eyes again, but this time they were tears of joy. The Deathworlders were not monsters at all. They were kind. They were gentle. They had come across the galaxy to help strangers they had never met, and they were treating Valari children like their own. Later, Horus spoke with Captain Miller through a holographic communication link. The human captain's image floated in the air before him, life-sized and realistic. I must ask you something, Horus said. Why did you come? Why did you help us? We are strangers to you. You owe us nothing. Captain Miller thought for a moment before answering. You asked for help, he said simply. That was enough. But the risk, Horus pressed. You traveled across the galaxy into unknown space. You faced enemies you had never seen before. You could have died. Your crew could have died. Why would you do this for people you do not know? Miller smiled slightly. Because it was the right thing to do. On Earth, we have a long history of helping each other. Sometimes we fail at it. Sometimes we are selfish and cruel. But at our best, we protect the weak and fight for the helpless. It is part of who we are. He paused and looked directly at Horus. Your people are not strangers to me anymore. I know you now. I have seen your children eating chocolate and laughing. I have seen your injured being healed. You are real to me, and I would die before I let anyone hurt you. Horus could not find words. No one had ever said anything like that to him before. This human, this supposed monster, had just promised to protect his people with his life. It was almost too much to accept. Thank you, Horus finally managed to say. Thank you, Captain Miller. I will never forget this. Jake, the captain said warmly. Call me Jake. I think we are past formalities now. Horus nodded, a small smile appearing on his blue face. Thank you, Jake. On the Luminara, humans and Valari worked side by side through the night. They repaired systems. They healed wounds. They shared food and stories. And slowly, very slowly, the fear began to transform into something new. Something that felt like the beginning of friendship. The USS Iron Will escorted the Luminara through space for 3 days. The giant human warship flew beside the small Valari transport, like a guardian watching over a child. Inside both vessels, something beautiful was happening. Two species that had never met before were learning to understand each other. The Valari children had completely lost their fear of the humans. They followed the crew members around constantly, asking endless questions about Earth. What was the sky like? What did the trees look like? What were dogs and cats? The humans answered every question with patience and often with laughter. Dr. Elisa Park spent hours teaching the Valari doctors about human medicine. In return, she learned about Valari healing techniques, which focused on gentle herbs and soft music. The two approaches were very different, but both sides found value in the exchange. Sergeant Ben Carter had become the unofficial hero of the Valari children. They called him Big Friend and climbed all over his armored form like he was a playground. Carter pretended to be annoyed, but everyone could see the smile he tried to hide. He showed the children pictures of his daughter Emily back on Earth. He promised that someday, maybe, the Valari children could visit and meet her. When the two ships finally reached Valari space, thousands of Valari vessels came out to meet them. They had received word of the rescue. They knew that strangers from a death world had saved their people. They did not know what to expect. The Iron Will stopped at the edge of Valari territory. Captain Jake Miller did not want to cause panic by flying a massive warship into their home space. He understood that the Valari would need time to process everything that had happened. A delegation of Valari leaders came aboard the Luminara to meet the humans in person. They included politicians, scientists, and spiritual leaders. All of them were nervous. All of them had heard the stories about Deathworlders. But Elder Horus had sent messages ahead, describing the kindness he had witnessed. The delegation was cautiously hopeful. When they saw the humans for the first time, many of them gasped in shock. The humans were so big, so solid, so powerful. Standing next to a human made every Valari feel like a tiny insect next to a mountain. But then Captain Miller stepped forward and bowed deeply, a sign of respect in many Earth cultures. His crew followed his example. The gesture was simple, but it spoke volumes. These powerful beings were showing humility. They were treating the Valari as equals, not as inferiors. On behalf of Earth and all its people, Jake said formally, "I am honored to meet you. We come in peace. We seek only friendship and understanding." The lead delegate, a wise old Valari named High Elder Kira, studied the human captain for a long moment. She had lived for over 200 years. She had seen many things, but she had never seen anything like this. "You saved 4,000 of our people," she said slowly. "You asked for nothing in return. You fed our children. You healed our wounded. You fixed our ship. Why would you do all this?" Jake smiled gently. "Because it was the right thing to do. Because your people were in trouble, and we could help. That is all the reason we needed." Kira turned to look at Elder Horus, who stood nearby with tears in his eyes. Horus nodded silently. Everything he had reported was true. The Deathworlders were not monsters. They were perhaps the kindest species he had ever encountered. "The Galactic Council has always told us to fear Earth," Kira said thoughtfully. "They said your people were violent and dangerous. They said we should never make contact with you." "We can be violent," Jake admitted honestly. "When our loved ones are threatened, we fight with everything we have. We are not perfect beings. We have a long history of war among ourselves. But we have also learned that there are better ways. We've learned that protecting others is more important than conquering them. We are still learning. We make mistakes, but we try to be better." Kira nodded slowly. She could sense that the human was telling the truth. There was no deception in his eyes, only sincerity. "Perhaps the council was wrong about your kind," she said finally. "Perhaps it is time for new understanding between our peoples." She extended her small hand toward Jake. It was a gesture of friendship that was universal across many cultures. Jake took her hand very carefully, aware that his grip could easily crush her delicate bones. They shook hands gently, and history was made. Word of the rescue spread across the galaxy within days. The story was incredible. A species of Deathworlders had traveled across space to save strangers. They had defeated the Fear Craft Raiders with a single shot. They had shown nothing but kindness and compassion to the aliens they rescued. The galaxy had never heard of such a thing. The Galactic Council held an emergency meeting to discuss the situation. Many species were terrified. The humans had technology that far surpassed anything known. Their warship was bigger and more powerful than anything in any fleet. If the humans decided to conquer, no one could stop them. But the Valari delegation spoke passionately in defense of Earth. Elder Horus himself addressed the council, describing everything he had witnessed. He told them about Dr. Park healing the wounded with gentle hands. He told them about Sergeant Carter giving chocolate to frightened children. He told them about Captain Miller bowing in respect. "These beings are not monsters," Horus declared. "They are protectors. They could have conquered us easily. They could have taken everything we have. Instead, they gave us food, medicine, and hope. They asked for nothing. They expected nothing. They simply helped because helping was the right thing to do." The council debated for many hours. In the end, they decided not to oppose contact with Earth. They could not ignore what the Valari had reported. They could not pretend that the humans had done anything wrong. The Deathworlders had earned the right to be heard. Back on the Iron Will, Captain Miller received a surprising message. Dozens of alien species were sending communications to Earth. They were not threats or warnings. They were greetings. They were questions about trade. They were invitations to meet and talk. The galaxy was reaching out to humanity. Jake read through the messages with a mixture of amazement and hope. Just weeks ago, humanity had believed it was alone in the universe. Now they had more potential friends than they could count. The universe had become a much larger and more wonderful place. Commander Emma Cole walked onto the bridge and stood beside him. She looked at the messages scrolling across the screen. "It seems we made quite an impression," she said with a small smile. "We just did what was right," Jake replied. "We help people in need. That should not be remarkable." "Maybe not," Emma agreed. "But apparently it is. Most species out there are taught to fear others. They compete for resources. They fight for territory. The idea that someone would risk their lives to help complete strangers is new to them." Jake looked out the main window at the stars. So many stars. So many worlds. So many species waiting to be met. "What are you thinking?" Emma asked. Jake was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke. "I am thinking that we have been given an incredible opportunity. We can shape how the galaxy sees us. We can be the monsters they feared, or we can be something better. We can show them that strength does not have to mean cruelty. We can show them that power can be used to protect instead of destroy." He turned to look at Emma. "I am thinking that we are not alone anymore. And maybe that is a good thing. Maybe we can learn from these species, and they can learn from us. Maybe together, we can build something better than any of us could build alone." Emma smiled. "That sounds like a beautiful dream." "It does," Jake agreed. "But all great things start as dreams. Someone has to believe in them first. Someone has to take the first step." He looked back at the stars. "We took that step today. We answered a call for help. We made friends instead of enemies. It is just the beginning. There is so much more to come. Challenges we cannot imagine. Problems we cannot predict. But I believe we can face them. I believe that humanity, for all its flaws, has the capacity for greatness. The iron will hum in space, a beacon of light against the endless dark. Inside its metal walls, 2,000 humans look toward a future full of possibilities. Behind them, the Valari waved goodbye, their tiny hands stretched toward the giant ship that had saved them. And across the galaxy, species who had never heard of Earth began to learn a new word: human. It meant different things to different beings. To some, it meant danger. To others, it meant hope. But to the Valari, and to all who would hear their story, it meant something simple and profound. It meant friend. The engines of the Iron Will roared to life. The ship turned toward home, toward Earth, toward a new chapter in human history. Captain Jake Miller gave one final order. "Take us home," he said. "We have a lot to tell our people, and I suspect we will be very busy in the years ahead." The ship jumped into faster-than-light travel and disappeared into the stars. The universe watched and wondered what the Deathworlders would do next. But for now, for this moment, there was only peace, only hope, only the promise of a better tomorrow, built on the simple foundation of kindness shown to strangers in their darkest hour. And somewhere in the depths of space, a small Valari child looked up at the sky and whispered a name it would never forget. "Thank you, big friend. Thank you, humans." The stars twinkled in response, holding secrets and stories yet to be told.